Hi, my name is Jeff Fritchie, and I'm a pastor involved with Time to Revive. As we continue on our process with these discipleship videos, we come to the next 2 points: share and endure. As you've now walked through the process of building your relationship with your disciple and establishing their relationship in Jesus Christ, now we come to what might seem a daunting task. We need to share biblical truth for what that looks like to endure the challenges and difficulties of life. First, let's talk about share. Your disciples inevitably will have questions about biblical truth. Jesus' disciples did as well. They came to him and they asked questions. And the way Jesus responded was to share truth with them with love and discernment. And that's our same call as a disciple maker. Not to jam it down their throat, but instead to truly care for them and to share the truth in love. One example is when the disciples came to Jesus in Mark chapter 10, verse 35. James and John, the sons of Zebedee, they came up to him and they said to him, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask of you." And he said to them, "What do you want me to do for you?" And they said to him, "Grant us to sit, one at your right hand and one at your left, in your glory." Just in case you missed it, the disciples came to Jesus and they said they wanted to sit at his right and his left. They wanted power. They wanted to be known as great. And Jesus took this moment to explain to them what it really meant to follow Jesus in humility. In verse 43, Jesus says this, "It shall not be so among you, but whoever would be great among you must be your servant, and whoever would be first among you must be slave of all. For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as ransom for many." Jesus took this chance and this opportunity to share biblical truth with discernment of what it really meant to follow Jesus. Sometimes you may be surprised at the questions that your disciples ask. In fact, sometimes they might even ask really bizarre questions. One example in Luke chapter 9, after a village had rejected Jesus, his disciples come to him in Luke 9:54. The disciples, James and John, when they saw it, they said, "Lord, do you want us to tell fire to come down from heaven and consume them?" But Jesus turned and he rebuked them. Jesus took this opportunity not to just give them fluff, or not just to tell them what their itching ears wanted to hear, but instead he told them the truth of what it meant to follow Jesus. And I think it's important for us as disciple makers, in the midst of challenging or bizarre or hard questions, that we take them to the Scripture, to truth, even hard truth. Now let's talk about the second point, to endure. Part of our role as disciple makers is to assist our disciples in enduring all kinds of hardships. Part of that process means for us as disciple makers that we let our disciples into the way that we're enduring hardships, that we share with them the challenges that we're having. And I think as we do that, they are much more likely to be vulnerable and share the hardships that they're experiencing. At the end of Jesus' life in Mark chapter 14, he comes to one of the most challenging moments in his life, and he allows his disciples to experience this with him. Mark chapter 14, verse 32. They went to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples, "Sit here while I pray." And he took with him Peter and James and John, and he began to be greatly distressed and troubled. And he said to them, "My soul is very sorrowful, even to death. Remain here and watch." And going a little farther, he fell on the ground and he prayed that, if it were possible, the hour might pass from him. And he said, "Abba, Father, all things are possible for you. Remove this cup from me, yet not what I will, but what you will." Christ's prayer showed the disciples how he was enduring hardship by saying those difficult words, "Not my will, but your will, Lord." And I think it's important for us to see that Jesus invited his disciples to be with him, even in the midst of his suffering, so they could see what it looked like to endure that kind of suffering. As you walk with your disciple through many, many hardships, they will get to see a practical example of how you endure, though not perfectly, but how you endure those hardships. And I think those hardships could be a lot of different things. It could be loss of a loved one, or loss of a job, or it could be just challenging emotions like depression or anxiety. It could be the challenges that come with just normal everyday life, and yet I believe our disciples need to see us enduring that with the Lord. You see, I think it might even be wise to be able to explain and communicate to our disciples that life with Jesus is not necessarily going to get easier. In fact, it might even get harder. And yet we have an invitation to endure because Jesus is with us as we walk through these sufferings. And the way that we share and endure we have an opportunity to really help our disciples learn what it means to trust Jesus in very tangible ways for every area of their life.